Welcome everyone to a special edition of Stats Race Lens from home, which is where most of us are and where most of us have been for the better part of the past 2 months. I'm Dan Tordjman with America's Best Racing, and on behalf of everyone at Equibase, we hope you've been staying safe and healthy. This Friday and Saturday, of course, we welcome the distraction of some of the best racing we've seen all year. It's at Oaklawn Park, and over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to dig into the fantasy stakes, the Oaklawn Handicap, and two divisions of the Arkansas Derby. To do that, I want to welcome in two regulars in this spot, TVG's Christina Blacker and the Uber capper, Ellis Starr of Equibase. Christina, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dan. It is good to be with you guys. And as you say, fantastic to have such a great distraction this Saturday. We've been really lucky to keep having the racing going from Oaklawn, from Gulfstream, Tampa, hoping for some more tracks to join that list very soon because it's been a great way to, be fortunate enough to keep working and to also just spend some extra time pouring yourself into something you love, which for me is this game. So I'm good and I'm glad to be with you guys.
That's great to hear, and absolutely amen on every count to what you said there. And Ellis, I won't give it away quite yet, but we know that you're looking to take a stand against the Bafferts in both divisions of the Arkansas Derby. Tell us a little bit about your process for tackling some of these races using Stats Race Lens this weekend.
Well, Dan, first of all, great to hear your voices and be on with everybody, and hello to everybody out there during these interesting times. And I think these races are the same way I tackled them that I would tackle the Derby, which would have been, of course, on the first Saturday in May, which is to look for patterns of improvement. In this case, we're not going a mile and a quarter, a mile and an eighth, but patterns of improvement considering how some of the training schedules and prep schedules have changed or had to be changed, looking for what the horse is going to do today more than normal in terms of horses that are going to peak that might like the distance. And then, of course, considering pace in these two really good races, even with some scratches, we still have, I think, 10 horse fields in both, and they look really good. The fantasy, also a very good race. So that's how I'm kind of looking at them.
Yeah, Ellis, you bring up an interesting point there about how a lot of times this time of year we were looking at who was targeting what race and where were their setup races and where we might expect improvement. This year and this spring, with all the uncertainty, it's really been hard to tell kind of what the target is because who knows when that next big race is going to be with the schedule sort of up in the air. So we'll dig into a lot more of that here in a minute. But we're going to get started first by telling you that Stats Race Lens is running a couple of really cool promotions this weekend for new customers. You can try Stats Race Lens for 1 month for only $1. You can use promo code SRLM1E when you purchase the product at Equibase.com. That's SRL for Stats Race Lens, M for month, the number 1, and E for Equibase to get that offer for $1. And current members, you can get another month of Stats Race Lens, a subscription for just $50. You use promo code STAYHOME50. That one's easy to remember, STAYHOME50, STAYHOME50. So you go ahead and purchase that at Equibase.com. Again, $50 if you're a current member, $1 if you're a new customer. So let's kick it off. As you can see on the screen right there, we've got Oaklawn Race 9. That's Race 9 on Friday. The fantasy stakes, 3-year-old fillies going a mile and a 16th. 14 horses set to line up. Just an incredible betting race, headlined by last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner, British Idiom, and the emergent Venetian Harbor coming in from Santa Anita off of back-to-back 10-length and 9-length scores for Richie Baltas. Christina, were you able to get around those two favorites?
Surprisingly, more so than I thought I would be, Dan. When I began handicapping this race, I really thought it was only going to be about those two, about Venetian Harbor, about British Idiom. But I think that as we go through the year and as we're kind of later with these prep races, later with the Oaks and the Derby, you have to start watching for horses that are catching up, horses that are late developers. So I just wanted to point out a couple of horses if you're playing the late pick 5, the late pick 4, and you don't just want to key in on the two horses to beat. Don't get me wrong, they will be on all my tickets. But I think we have to talk about Ice Princess a little bit. I'm looking at this filly and realizing that The only bad race on her career was the Frizette, and after that race, she went to the sideline. So I'm willing to sort of draw a little bit of a line through that. And I see a filly that is 3 for 4, that has never had the opportunity to go 2 turns, that looks like pedigree-wise, she would love it. She's a daughter of Palace Malice, the Belmont winner. She's out of an Awesome Again mare. And then I just rely on the barn as well. Danny Gargan, one of those trainers that has been high percentage for a long time and high percentage consistently. And I'm looking here at his barn over the last 6 months, and he's a 29% winner, 32 winners from 110 starts, 54% in the money, a positive ROI. His horses do get bet, but I don't think this filly is going to get bet come Friday over at Oaklawn. Essentially, he hasn't had any Oaklawn runners in the last 5 years that I could find, but anywhere else he ships, he does well. So I just want to caution everybody, Ice Princess is, I think, a horse you have to take a second and third look at. I also wanted to talk a little bit about She Dares the Devil. She's the number 7 in here for Brad Cox. I was on the air for TVG when she won the Honeybee, and just so impressed by this filly. We're going to pick up the replay of that race, and we'll just kind of take it from the quarter pole home, because I think what really happens with her is the light bulb goes on very quickly at one stage. So take a look as they turn for home here. Joe Talamo is aboard. She's kind of buried in behind horses. She's the 2 horse with the white cap, really nowhere to go. He's kind of trying to decide, does he want to split the 4 and the 1, or does he want to split the 1 and the 5? Eventually decides, all right, ducking inside. There's a little more room there. Not much, though. And for a 3-year-old filly to make a move like this, I mean, look at her strides in the final few jumps. I'm really impressed by this filly. 2 starts back, she was defeated by Bonnie South. Bonnie South came back to win the Fairgrounds Oaks. If you wanted to, do some of your chart work, it's all right there in stats for you. So I think she's another horse to beat. And then the other horse that I just wanted to mention in here is Ringleader, just to her outside. I find it curious that Joe Talamo ends up on this filly. He's vying for the leading rider title there. She started her career 3 for 3, a little bit off in the Honeybee, only because she was so rank early on. They cut her back to a sprint again. She ran into the ultra-fast Kamari and Edgeway in that last race. But I think if Talamo's willing to give her another chance, there has to be more to it when you think about her routing. So the point for me for this race, Dan, is that it's not as simple as Venetian Harbor and Ringleader. I think you have to dive deeper with some of those other fillies for your ticket.
Yeah, key booking there, as you mentioned, with Joe Talamo. And all weekend long, really, you look at these races, 12, 13, 14 horses. You got jockeys coming in from all over the place. A lot of them, including on the one Ice Princess, like you mentioned, you got Kendrick Harmouche. Kendrick, if you look at his stats there on the left, look at the last 30 days, no starts. He hasn't even been riding. And you got a lot of jockeys who've been out of action, including Javier Castellano, who's on British Idiom, the favorite in this race. Ellis, for you, I think if I know you well enough, you're not going to play the favorites in here. Who did you end up with? Ellis, we may have lost your audio. I don't know how we can get a signal from you. Christina, are you hearing Ellis right now?
I am not hearing him. I hear you. I see the movement. I think he's probably explaining his selections a little bit there online, but I've not heard him just yet. But I did know that, or I just kind of, I think, read off your notes there while he's working on that. Dan, I think you like this filly a little bit too, correct? Harvey's Little Goyle?
I do, yeah. Harvey's Little Goyle, I thought, was one who, again, is going to get sort of a little overshadowed by some of the bigger names in this race. But what I like about this horse was the last race, the Busanda. Specifically, I mean, the way the horse breaks isn't great. She's wide early, and we'll take a look at that race, which is great. She's the 6th horse in here, so once this horse loads, you'll see what I'm talking about. She doesn't break well, and rather than move her over to the rail, you see that's her, the 6th, the gray right there. Junior Alvarado stays on the outside with her and doesn't really attempt to save any ground. He's pretty confident early. And then eventually he'll make a sweeping move. He goes by all of them and draws off. And so, you could see there, no real attempt to save ground or do anything along those lines. He'll stay wide. He'll keep her in the clear. And then here shortly, he's going to make a move and he's going to pretty much just swoop the entire field. and eventually opens up to win by 7.5 lengths. The horse who finishes behind Harvey's Little Goyle is I'm trying to remember her name now off the top of my head. I've completely lost track of it, but she came back and she won her next start impressively. So there's a lot to like here in terms of a horse heading in the right direction. You can see she's 3-5 there. And like your interest in Ice Princess, it's a horse that this is a horse that I see having no issue going a little bit longer, and potentially heading in the right direction. So here's the move here where she just goes around the field, and you can see where she pretty much will open up on them. The horse, by the way, that I mentioned that I was thinking of was Water White, the one horse. You'll see make a move here. Doesn't get anywhere close to Harvey's Little Goyle, but comes back in her next start and wins impressively in stakes company. So that was my interest, at least, in Harvey's Little Goyle. I'm with you too on Ice Princess. That's another price that I like. And then the other conversation that's worth having here, or at least thinking about, is the fact that with Venetian Harbor, you're looking at a filly who's probably going to be able to get to the lead fairly easily. One of the horses you mentioned, Ringleader, is one who could put a little pressure on. But if she doesn't get that pressure, I think Venetian Harbor is going to be very difficult in this spot. So let's move on to Saturday in the Oaklawn Handicap, race 12, which is sandwiched between the two divisions of the Arkansas Derby. We've got another field of 14 here. True Odds has Improbable as the favorite here, comes off a huge effort in the Oaklawn Mile, but he's drawn out wide again. Seems to love finishing second at Oaklawn, certainly not unbeatable. Christina, how do you think the pace might unfold in here? And from there, who did you land on?
Yeah, it's a really tricky race, isn't it? And I think that the post position has affected it quite a bit. As far as the pace goes, I'm looking at horses that are going to be, forwardly placed early, and a few of them I like, but I think they undo each other. Mr. Freeze is the fastest horse in here early on. You can see that on your screen there with regard to his running style. Tax is very quick as well. Warrior's Charge is a horse that I had the chance to watch with my own two eyes in the Razorbacks, but I think he's one-dimensional. And looking through his past performances, every time he wins, he establishes that early lead. And as much as I give them both a lot of credit, I think as we're going the full mile and an eighth of the Oaklawn Handicap, I think that's going to start to stretch Mr. Freeze and Warrior's Charge at this level against other high-class horses. So for that reason, I ended up with Combatant in here, the 7 for John Sadler. I've noticed over the last couple of years that he has started to really space out his campaigns for his horses. He gives them maybe 2, 3, 4 races max, and then a little bit of a break. And that third race off the layoff always seems to be the best. So I pulled the angle with regard to Sadler runners, third off the layoff, and specifically in all stakes races. I wanted to know how he performs at the highest level with this pattern that I've seen, whether it be with claimers or, all the way up to the top. And he does pretty well here. You're talking about 27% win rate in stakes races, 12 horses placing 15% show. So he gets, his fair share of seconds or thirds as well. It's basically 11 for 42. It's a really strong statistic. And I think Combatant is going to get a great trip in here, Dan. I think he's going to sit that sort of first or second flight off of the speedsters, have to jump on the closers. And as much as I respect Improbable off that last race, and I've always been a fan of Improbable, I think the post is just going to hurt him again. I don't see him as completely changing his style and taking back, and especially with Bob Baffert putting Martin Garcia aboard. I'm confused. Maybe they want to try to send him out there and put him into the race as well, but then again, that just throws him right into the teeth of the pace from Mr. Freeze and the pace from Warrior's Charge. So ultimately, my pick is going to be Combatant, but it's mostly a pace play, and it's also based on if I think, which of these horses can actually win at this level. So Combatant for me in here.
And you mentioned that Combatant fits here, obviously coming off of the big cap win. And in terms of a fit, I can't see a better rider for Combatant than Joel Rosario, given the fact that, this is a horse that really needs to be worked into a race. And Rosario, is the kind of rider who'll start scrubbing on you, quarter mile into a race and won't stop until you cross the line. And so I agree with you. I looked at Combatant long and hard. I think he's a realistic player. The horse I landed on, though, is the 11 Tax. This is a horse that I haven't ever really been super high on, and I'm not going back to the well here after disappointment like I would be with Improbable. I think, look, when you look at Tax, he clearly didn't take to being off Lasix last out in the Pegasus World Cup. And you can see here, pretty handy, the indicator here where they tell you change on Lasix here. So he's back on Lasix. I think you're going to see a big improvement. You saw it with, for example, Mr. Freeze, who didn't run a bad Pegasus World Cup, but he jumped 10 Equibase points going from off Lasix to back on Lasix last out in the Gulfstream Park Mile. And, you know, prior to the Pegasus, Tax had run some of his best races, going a mile and an eighth with his best, the 110 in the Discovery Stakes at Aqueduct. He's also got that 108 down there in the Jim Dandy, which of course he won thanks to the poor trip for Tacitus, who returns here. Always question marks around that horse. I'm going to lay off of him again. And, you know, I did look at Danny Gargan as well. We talked about trainers who don't usually run horses here at Oaklawn, you know, how they do and how they do off a layoff, and specifically with Tax here. I did a couple of searches. The one you're looking at right now, you got on top 61 to 180 days. So same layoff that Tax is coming in off of. 182 starts, 41 wins, 100 in the money. More than half of those starters finishing in the money. High win percentage, positive ROI. You got to love that. And then you further narrow it down to stakes races on the dirt, and you can see Gargan isn't throwing these horses into stakes company off a long break unless they can run, and positive results there. The other thing is you see the three winners there. Again, small sample, but all prices as well, and I think you're going to get a fair enough price with this horse that reflected in the ROI there. You're going to get a fair enough price on this horse, and the fact that Carmouche is in, again, one of his first call riders, is another positive sign for me. So for me, Tax is the play. I thought Mr. Freeze would still hang around for a slice. I don't think you're going to see him fade. I just don't know that he can win. I'm with you. I think he gets enough pressure to where, you know, he gets past like he did in the Pegasus World Cup. I believe we have Ellis's audio back, so let's test it out. Ellis, did you want to share an angle on this race?
Not an angle. Just talk about the horses I like and why. We'll get some angles for the Arkansas Derby, and I'll run through this quick. Trophy Chaser is my top pick here. A perfect example of a fast improving 4-year-old. Those two races. First, the 9 furlong win by 8 lengths, the 97, then jumped up to win the Challenger Grade 3, not too far from this level. At 113, right there with Combatants 110 in the Santa Anita Derby. He's likely going to be stalking if he runs the same race as he did last time out. He'll be third behind Warrior's Charge of Mr. Freeze. Combatant I have to use. He's a strong contender for all the top honors here, as the reasons you both said. And then the 13 and 14 quickly, also new 4-year-olds, pretty much new, Night Ops and Night Ops and By My Standards. By My Standards, of course, won the Louisiana Derby, back Kentucky Derby, long time off, 2 wins, a win at 9 furlongs, already a Grade 2 stakes winner. He could get a good trip in 4th and 5th if Saez gets him over to the rail. And then the 13, Night Ops, also a stakes winner, the Essex 350,000 at 109 was a career best. I'll use them a little bit on top, but mainly my contenders are going to be Trophy Chaser and Combatant.
All right. So we have consensus on Combatant. That's one to look at, and Trophy Chaser from Ellis. Let's go back a race to race 11. It's the first division of the Arkansas Derby, a race that goes through the horse on the rail. That's Charlatan. No one has been near him in 2 starts. And the only horse who figured to be able to stick with him from a pace perspective, Shoot or Shoot, scratched out of the race. Christina, what scenario is there for beating Charlatan? And if there's no way to beat him, how do you make money betting this race?
That's the thing, right? I mean, I think of the 2 divisions, you know, Baffert looks strong, but for me, Charlatan is the one that might be the single, might be, you know, the horse of the day to kind of use as your free square. I think the way you make money is to play the late pick 4, to play the late pick 5. I mean, the late pick 5s especially has been paying so much money at Oaklawn over the last few weeks. And for whatever reason, the very last race on the card has been a crazy long shot. So I think you cut it down in this race, and then you just move on and you try to find a price somewhere else. You mentioned the scratch of shoot or shoot. The race goes right through him. It's basically going to be over within the first 5 jumps. If he breaks and makes the lead, case closed. If he doesn't, then, it's wide open. If you're looking for someone else, the logical next horse is Gouverneur Morris. Todd Pletcher has always done well at Oaklawn, but especially so over the last several years. Looking at the stat here, this last 5 years as far as graded stakes at Oaklawn. So we took a real, niche group here. He's 6 for 16 and 38%. And you actually get a pretty decent return on your investment there. Median win payout is $8.30. We also have the opportunity in stats to go ahead and click that show all button. And that's what you're seeing on the bottom half of your screen. And I found this really surprising that Bob Baffert was 18%. I thought they'd be a lot closer as far as their actual win rate with stakes horses at Oaklawn. And I know these are small samples, but you have to realize that these are races that these two trainers target year in, year out. So Gouverneur Morris is the logical next horse. You also look at the other horses on his past performances that have defeated him as of late. Tis the Law, the winner of the Florida Derby, is the highest ranked horse on the NPRA poll right now. Maxfield, who beat him in the Breeders' Futurity, was the favorite for the Breeders' Cup and will be one of those horses that everybody talks about as soon as we find a spot for him to run again. The one thing I am going to really keep an eye on with Gouverneur Morris this weekend, I think John Velasquez is going to try to keep him out in the clear. Because I watched the Florida Derby a few times trying to find an excuse for Gouverneur Morris, and I think he doesn't like being boxed in. He doesn't like the kickback. He doesn't like being stuck in behind horses. If he's outside and in the clear somehow, that's where you're going to see his true ability and the best version of what he can do. So tactically, I think he sits off the hip of Charlatan a little further back, but outside, and will try to make one run. But the race goes through the one horse in here for me, Dan.
It's funny what you mentioned about Gouverneur Morris. Sometimes you go into a race with confirmation bias. You go in and in your mind, you're thinking, I really want to bet this horse today. I want to bet this horse on Saturday. And you handicap the race, and then you kind of convince yourself that maybe it's not the right thing to do. And that's what happened to me with Gouverneur Morris. I seriously came out of the Florida Derby thinking, I love the race he ran. He was against the bias, pretty slow pace as well. And he was the only horse that really made a move from the back. And so I thought I was going to land on Gouverneur Morris. But for me, the issue was pace in this race. I don't know where it's coming from. I think it's all Charlatan. And if that's the case, I think he's going to be extremely, extremely tough to beat here. You could see it on the race projection here. He's loose early. He's loose in the middle. And, unless, I think you alluded to it, unless he gets boxed in, doesn't break well, and he has broken a step or two slow in his 2 starts, you can see it happening. But you're going to really need to have someone to his outside just absolutely gun it to try to keep him boxed in. Really, multiple horses will have to do that and have to kind of gang up on him, so to speak, in order for that to happen. I like Basin a little bit, drawn to the outside. You also talked about Gouverneur Morris, a horse who didn't like kickback. I felt the same way with Basin. His last 2 races, he hasn't looked happy taking dirt. He's been climbing a bit. He's been on the inside trying to find running room. I think being drawn widest of all is a dream for him, and I think he's going to improve based on that. He'll also improve with Ricardo Santana back up, who he rode him back in the day when he was just starting out. And so Santana coming back for Asmussen, positive signs there. To me, those were the 2 primary win contenders. If you want to add one other horse to your ticket, I add Basin. But if you're playing trifectas, if you're playing superfectas, a little bit of a long shot for you here is Crypto Cash. You look at the surfaces that this horse has been running on, the different races he's been in. It's absolutely wild. It's been an incredible journey. You can see he broke his maiden on the dirt last year at Ellis. He comes back to win a turf allowance at Churchill Downs. After 4 months away, he made his 2020 debut on the all-weather surface at Turfway. If you watch that replay, he took a bad step out of the gate, which ultimately left him about a dozen lengths off an extremely slow pace. But I love the way he closed. I mean, he really made this incredible, visually impressive move. And now Kenny McPeak spots him in this toughest dirt race that he could have found. Obviously, the horse is training well. I did post a solid work at Keeneland on April 19th. And using some Stats Race Lens research, there is a search for McPeak that might shed a little bit of light on this particular move the past 5 years. First off the layoff, all weather to dirt, excluding all weather. So essentially what he's doing here, again, all weather to a dirt race, 3 wins and 11 starts. And if you look, there was a DQ in there as well. That first one up there was a DQ. So it's actually 4 wins, if you want to count that one, super high percentage. And even without the money there, you see the plus 195 ROI, high win percentage, high in the money percentage. I don't think this is a random blind spot by Kenny. I think this is a horse who's ready to run a big race. And I think this horse, I can almost guarantee you will finish in the top 4. And he's probably going to be about 30 or 40 to 1. So that's my take if you're playing the tries and the supers. But Charlatans going to be super tough. And I think Basin as well could be a serious player. If I know Ellis again, I think he's going to be going for a price here. So Ellis, what did you land on?
Well, I'm going to use Charlatan. You've already talked about, so I'm not going to say anything. I think I know D'Or is the horse here at a decent price, 6 or 8 to 1. If you'll notice, you put on blinkers for the Risen Star. We could draw a line through it. Stats Race Lens makes it really easy to draw a line through a race so you don't see it. It doesn't count. Blinkers are off today. Up here, blinkers off. These 3 races are good. Just beaten ahead. Storm the Court had his way on the front end. Just beaten the neck, 1,000 words. Big numbers. Coming back as a 3-year-old, they should be stronger. And now when you look at pedigree, looking at the sires of this race, and I love doing this for Division 1, these are the sires the last 5 years, dirt, 9 to 10 furlongs only. Only the 3-year-old preps in the Classic here. All stakes. The 3 leading sires are Medaglia d'Oro, Uncle Mo, and Candy Ride. And of course, I know D'Or is by Medaglia d'Oro, so he gets that on me. I think he can rebound. And I don't know if he can post the upset, but I certainly like him a lot to play him with those Charlatans. Sprinter route, nice figures. Look at the 2-year-old figures, 106 and 101 for No D'Or. You've got 108 and 102 for Charlatan. They're the same. I'm not. Charlatan's going to be 3 to 5, and No D'Or is going to be 5 to 1. They should be a little closer. Certainly, in my prediction, Shooter scratched. We already showed that. Governor Morris is the other one. You guys made the case already. He actually got a higher Equibase figure, even though he ran 4th in the Florida Derby, so he should run well as well. And Constitution has very few starters, but I don't need to show that. Back to that graphic, the 2 horses he's had so far that are this year's 3-year-olds are Independence Hall and 'Tis the Law. The latter, of course, being the undisputed leader of the division. So there's no question Governor Morris can get 9 furlongs. So for me, it's a No D'Or, Charlatan, and Governor Morris, and the rest are all running for 3rd.
Ellis dropping the pedigree intel, and I can tell you one horse who doesn't have the fanciest pedigree, not the biggest purchase price, but I want to give a quick shout out to the 2-horse designated hitters racing, My Friend's Beer, trained by Jerry O'Dwyer, a huge fan club on social media. Chris Brown, Ellis, I think you've seen 1 or 2 tweets from Chris this week talking up My Friend's Beer and potentially pulling off a shocker this weekend at Oaklawn.
It's a big dance, and he's certainly entitled to be excited, butterflies in his stomach and all that. So wish him the best of luck.
All right, same here. Let's move ahead to the 2nd division of the Arkansas Derby. It's going to be race 13. And this race, I think, if you ask most people which Baffert is more vulnerable, they tell you it's this one, it's Nadal. He's still the one to beat, though. Came really close to getting passed by Accession last out in the Rebel Stakes. That was at a mile and a 16th. Of course, they're going to be going a mile and an 1/8 today. And plenty of speed signed up for this one, including Louisiana Derby winner Wells Bayou. You've also got Saratogian down on the inside. Christina, did that presence of additional pace here scare you away from Nadal? And if so, where do you end up?
Yeah, it did. It really did. And I think you're right. I think of the 2 Baffert horses, he is the more vulnerable of the 2. I could, see the scenario where Baffert does sweep both races, but if he's going to lose one of the divisions, I think this is the more likely area where he could be a little weaker. You can see from the pace scenario here, it's going to be hot, and there are some good horses up on the front there with him. Nadal, Wells Bayou, King Guillermo, Saratogian, all class horses with that early speed. I wanted to make just a couple points about a few horses, again, if you're playing any kind of multi-race exotic wagers, and I'll start with King Guillermo in here. We see where that green number is and circled and highlighted for you on stats. Highest equibase speed figure in the PPs for the race. It's for this horse as well. He's coming off a career best. It was also his first attempt dirt routing, so I think he really set the table for himself in terms of what is going to come for the second half of this year. He's the son of Uncle Mo. He's out of a Dixieland band mare. And no matter what kind of speed figures you like, you know, if you're looking at the equibase speed figures, if you're following others, he's charting higher off that race than anyone else in this group. So I think he's a horse you have to absolutely include on all tickets and treat as a very serious win candidate in this group. The other horse I wanted to make a quick note on is the 7, and that is Silver Prospector. I was there when he ran in the Southwest and when he won it. And it was curious that Ricardo Santana stuck with him that day because Asmussen had several horses in the race, and Silver Prospector looked like sort of the weaker of the bunch coming off of that fourth place effort in the Smarty Jones. And you notice the Smarty Jones run over a muddy track. He does have some success on the off track before, so I don't think he really likes it. And I think you saw that sort of rear its head again in the Rebel. I think he gets a little bit finicky. So far, we're looking at some clear skies for the weekend. So I think Silver Prospector is another horse that you just have to give a second look. Keep in mind how many races Asmussen and Santana win there at Oaklawn. This is their home track. They don't want anybody coming in here and taking the Arkansas Derby or one of the divisions away from them. So he'll be a horse that I use on all tickets. And then to the outside, Farmington Road, I know he's a horse that you're going to talk about a little bit, Dan. I just really like him. I love the last race. He's had so much trouble. I'll let you get into that when you get the chance. And then Wells Bayou to the outside. If he were not drawn to the outside, I think I would make him my top selection. I think he probably has the ability to rate as I look at his past performances, but he's also a horse that natural speed is his weapon. He has such a big stride. He has a beautiful pedigree to go on with it. Looking at Lucky out of a Hard Spun mare. Hard Spun is one of my favorite influences for any kind of stamina, whether you're talking turf or dirt. And I think Florent Geroux is going to send him. I just don't see him taking back. He's been aggressive like this in the past, not only with this horse, but with others at the top level. So I'm going to include Wells Bayou. I'm going to be rooting for him. I don't think the pace really favors him, but I do think he has the quality to win the race this weekend, Dan.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have the same concerns with Wells Bayou, and I thought that he potentially was an interesting horse to look at if the other pace wasn't here. So now we're taking a look at we've got the Oaklawn Stakes here. We don't have to watch this race, although I did want to kind of show you. Okay, for fast forwarding a little bit, we can look at the move that Farmington Road makes from way out of it. He's near the back of the pack at this point. Now he's making his move here. And he's going to be followed by the 3-horse, the eventual winner in this race. Let's see if we can pick him up. Is he in the screen yet? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So that's him making his move. He's the one. Yeah, that's him kind of making a move there, but sort of flattening out a little bit. And also the winner there, Mr. Big News, actually comes out just a touch on him, which slows down his momentum. So yeah, look, huge move from the back of the pack. If you look at the race prior to the Risen Star there, same sort of situation. He was sitting behind a really slow pace. Mr. Monomoy was completely loose there and unpressured. They posted 3/4 in 113 or thereabouts, 114, and he was way out of it. Makes this really wide sweeping move, and the same thing, just kind of shows up a bit too late. Finishes 4th there. I think with all of the pace in this race, something that he has not really enjoyed in his past couple of starts. I think given the distance of mile and 1/8, and also given the fact that you got Javier Castellano, people don't know, he tested positive for coronavirus, was in quarantine for 2 weeks, went back home to his family after that 2 weeks, and was then told by Oaklawn that he had to sit out another 2 weeks in quarantine outside of New York. So he then left New York, went to Florida, spent an additional 2 weeks in Florida quarantine, just so he could ride this weekend. And I actually spoke to him a couple of days ago, and he told me that the 2 rides he was obviously looking forward to, a British Idiom and this one right here. He's super high on Farmington Road. And so, look, I don't know what kind of price we're going to get, but this horse makes all sorts of sense from a pace perspective, and given the horse's progression as well, running 2 big races from far off the pace, and pace that was not nearly as fast as it's going to be on Saturday in the second division of the Arkansas Derby. Ellis, bring us home. Who is your pick in the second division here?
Well, first of all, Farmington Road won't be anywhere near 12-1 morning line, but he's still my top pick. Blinkers woke him up, as you pointed out. We watched the replay, going back really quickly to the pace analysis of the race. The projection, I think, is wrong. It's more like this: 4 horses. Nadal, I think, may not even hit the board in this race. Farmington Road certainly really excellent with this, coming from off the pace to improve. Fletcher, of course, Castellano, as you mentioned. King Guillermo, the best figure in the race, improving. This wasn't a fluke, because if you remember, Sol Volante had run on turf, came back to win 2 later in the dirt stakes. And so King Guillermo just basically followed Sol Volante, not only in the pulpit, but also in winning the Tampa Bay Derby. And then additionally, back to the other thing we talked about, Sires, really quick, it's the same thing. In Sires, Uncle Mo, looking at Lucky, Quality Road, the Sires of King Guillermo, the Sires of Farmington Road, and the 11 is Wells by You, except Christina pointed out you've got an issue with the possible pace of the race. Last, I'm with Christina on the third contender here is Silver Prospector. Draw a line through that race, traffic, all kinds of other problems. He's an in and outer. This is his in race, 3rd first, 4th first, 6th. So it's going to be Farmington Road, King Guillermo, and Silver Prospector for me in Division 2.
Pedigree, pace, we've looked at all the different search functions, the way you can customize these searches on Stats Race Lens. And just to remind everyone, playing this weekend for new customers, you could try Stats Race Lens for $1, just $1. Use promo code SRLM1E this week when you purchase at equibase.com. If you're a current customer, you get a month for $50, heavily discounted, using promo code STAYHOME50. Of course, we hope that everyone staying home, staying safe, and enjoying the races this weekend. Want to thank Ellis Starr for not only sharing his insights here, but of course managing the controls and working through some technical issues to get us straightened out here. And also thank you to Christina, TVG's Christina Blacker, for being here and sharing her insights on what's an extremely busy and extremely fun week in the world of horse racing. We wish you lots of luck, and we'll see you next time.